Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so have you ever noticed that your brain seems to get absolutely the loudest right when life finally gets quiet? It's literally like your mind is throwing a raging party the exact second your head hits the pillow. It is a universal and, let's be honest, deeply exhausting struggle. Today, we're taking an empathetic look into exactly why our brains never seem to just shut off. And we're going to explore how an ancient Japanese concept holds a surprisingly simple but honestly profound cure for all this modern mental restlessness.
Why is the mind loudest when life gets quiet? You know the exact feeling this question is getting at, right? You finally lie down at night, the house is totally silent, and boom, suddenly your mind just hits the gas pedal. It starts replaying random conversations from like 3 years ago. You overanalyze a text message you sent this morning. You imagine completely unrealistic worst-case scenarios. You start worrying about work, money, relationships, your entire future, literally all at the exact same time. It's the frustrating irony of trying to relax. Even when nothing dangerous is happening in your room, your mind just absolutely refuses to stand down and let you rest.
Okay, let's dive into this. The midnight overthinking stack. Think of it kind of like a giant wobbly tower. First, it's the past conversations at the bottom. Then you mentally stack the text messages right on top of that. Then the worst-case scenarios. And before you know it, you're carrying the weight of your entire future while literally just trying to get some sleep. The weird part is, there is no actual danger present, yet your mind keeps treating these stacked thoughts like immediate, real-world threats, refusing to let you relax. This is what modern overthinking really feels like, just constant, overwhelming mental noise.
Now, what's really interesting here is the massive paradigm shift we need to talk about. Overthinking, myth versus reality. Most of us think overthinking is just thinking too much, or hey, maybe even a sign of high intelligence, right? But the reality is actually a lot different. Overthinking is usually an inability to sit with uncertainty. It's not a sign of a genius intellect at work. Sometimes it's really just a nervous system, frantically stuck in survival mode. Your mind keeps searching, analyzing, predicting, and preparing over and over again, just desperately trying to feel safe. And let's be totally honest about our environment. Modern life quietly encourages this exact survival mode. We are practically training our brains to be restless every single day. Just look at the modern restless brain training going on. Constant notifications going off all day, endless doom scrolling, way too much information, too many decisions, and practically zero silence. I mean, we'll even watch a show while scrolling on our phones just to avoid a quiet moment. The brain never fully rests. And eventually, because of all this constant hyperstimulation, we actually become deeply uncomfortable with stillness itself. When things get quiet, our brains just panic.
So how do we fix this? Well, in Japan, there's this fascinating cultural habit that approaches the mind very differently. It's an old concept called ma. Ma is an intentional pause, negative space that allows something else to breathe. It's often translated as negative space, but it doesn't simply mean emptiness, it's purposeful. In Japanese culture, this powerful antidote to our restless minds appears absolutely everywhere. In architecture, in conversation, in beautiful gardens, even in daily movement. They don't try to fight or win against their thoughts. They actively create space for those thoughts to slow down naturally.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core of the concept. Think about music for a second. If every second was filled with non-stop sound, music would become exhausting. The pauses are what create emotional clarity. Without those silent pauses, the notes just crash into each other and become this giant wall of noise. The exact same thing happens in the human mind. Without pauses, everything just becomes mentally overwhelming. We need that negative space, that ma, to actually appreciate and process the notes of our daily lives. Contrast our modern habits with natural processing, what our brains actually need. Today, we instantly fill every single mental gap. Waiting in line, we pull out the phone. Sitting quietly, we immediately put on a podcast. Walking alone, we blast music. Even boredom has almost completely disappeared from our daily routines. But historically, boredom served a really vital psychological purpose. It provided the brain with necessary unstructured time to process emotions naturally. We've basically completely engineered natural processing right out of our days.
And without those natural processing spaces, we trigger a massive cascading problem. Because we bypass our downtime, our experiences just start stacking up. It goes from unfinished emotion to unfinished stress, which creates endless unfinished mental loops, and finally, a totally crowded mind. You are essentially hoarding mental files, All because you never gave your brain the processing time, the ma, to safely file them away. This leads directly to cognitive overload, which is absolutely one of the biggest hidden causes of overthinking. Just look at the causes.
Visual information, social information, emotional uncertainty, digital stimulation, future prediction, and unresolved stress. Throughout the day, your brain is secretly juggling this massive amount of hidden input. Eventually, managing all this forces the nervous system to become hyper-alert. And when the nervous system stays alert for way too long, it begins searching for problems even when none exist. That is exactly why overthinking gets so much worse at night. The external stimulation finally stops, so all this unfinished internal noise just rises straight to the surface.
So how do we fix this overload? Well, this is one reason traditional Japanese environments often feel so emotionally calm. They focus on creating mental breathing room through things like tea ceremonies, silent gardens, slow rituals, minimalist spaces, and even intentional pauses in conversation. At first glance, these things might just seem simple or aesthetically pleasing, but neurologically, they are deeply engineered to reduce that exact cognitive overload we just talked about. They purposefully inject Ma into daily life to let the brain decompress.
There is a super fascinating cultural contrast in how we treat silence. In many modern societies, silence feels incredibly awkward. People rush to fill it immediately with talking or scrolling or just noise. But in Japan, silence is often treated as emotionally meaningful, where the mind stops panicking. It fundamentally changes how the brain relates to thought itself. It's a highly counterintuitive paradigm. When silence stops feeling threatening to you, the mind gradually stops panicking inside those empty moments. You actually become friends with the quiet.
So, the crucial point is that another powerful habit connected to reducing overthinking is simplicity. Simplicity reduces mental friction. Organized routines free energy for what matters. Now, this doesn't mean extreme minimalism or throwing away all your earthly possessions, right? It's simply about reducing unnecessary chaos. Think about decision fatigue, deciding what to wear, what to eat, what to watch, what to buy. That constant choice slowly but surely drains your emotional energy. By creating simple meals, predictable rituals, and organized spaces, you stop decision fatigue from draining you, and you actually free up your mind.
We also really deeply underestimate the physical versus mental connection. A cluttered environment equals unfinished signals and a cluttered mind. Why? Because your brain keeps receiving these tiny visual signals that something remains unfinished, keeping you hyper-alert. But on the flip side, calm spaces equals safety, stillness, and completion. They send the exact opposite signal to your nervous system. Your physical environment is literally acting as a direct signal to your nervous system, telling it whether it needs to stand guard or if it's finally safe to stand down.
And this brings us to perhaps the most profound takeaway of this entire explainer. Peace does not come from controlling every thought. It comes from changing your relationship with mental noise itself. Overthinkers so often fall into the exhausting trap of believing, man, if I just analyze this problem long enough, I'll finally feel safe. But the mind rarely finds peace through endless analysis. It usually finds lasting peace through acceptance, rhythm, and creating emotional space. It's about understanding that not every thought deserves your full attention. Sometimes the absolute healthiest thing you can do is just stop feeding mental noise with more mental noise.
The profound truth this philosophy quietly reminds us of is that our nervous systems were never designed for constant stimulation. Human beings need pauses, silence, space, slowness. Overthinking simply means your brain has been denied rest. We literally require moments where the brain no longer has to defend itself against an endless stream of input. So if you are struggling tonight, I really want to reassure you, overthinking is not a sign that your mind is broken. It is simply a sign that your brain has been denied rest for far too long. Your tired nervous system is just begging for a pause.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a provocative question to reflect on. What makes your mind feel the noisiest lately? Take a moment today to identify your own sources of cognitive overload. Recognizing exactly what fills your space is the very first step to clearing it and inviting just a little more Ma into your daily routine. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating concept. Keep seeking out those intentional pauses, and I truly hope this helps you find a bit more peace on your mindfulness journey.